Tinubu presidency in 30 days is impacting individuals, businesses, and the economy in an inescapable way, driven by a double-barreled liberalization policies. There is increased hardship as cost of living rises sharply. Many schools of thought yesterday indicate that the difficulties would soften in the medium term if the fallouts are managed properly. The policies, which are removal of subsidy through a petrol pricing to market forces and removal of official controls on foreign exchange market by floating the naira exchange rate in an open market, prices of most food and essential items have now come under severe inflationary pressures. To have this conversation with us this morning is Mr. Matthew Oluku. Good morning, sir. You're welcome.
Good morning. Thank you for having me.
All right. Let us look at the soaring cost of governance and nation building. Nigeria was at a point where people were already gnashing their teeth before the inauguration of President Bola Tinubu, and somehow we were hoping that hope would actually really be renewed, and maybe things would get a little better. But it happens that it's like we're tightening our belts even more. How do you react to that?
I think it's clear. Even before the inauguration, the president has said that they are going to take some tough decision. I think that's what we're seeing. But again, I think the only thing I may say I'm not comfortable with is if you are having a particular policy direction, there are some actions of government that need to address the hardship that comes with it. Particularly the issue of subsidy removal of gasoline, PMS, what we normally call petrol. One would have expected that the government would have been proactive in converting most of the vehicles that run on fossil fuel to use liquefied natural gas. That way, you will lessen the burden and hardship, because it's proven that if you use compressed natural gas as against fossil fuel, you'll be saving between 40 to 50% of your operational costs. The former government tried in that direction, they couldn't do it. So one would have expected that this government would have done something in that regard before total deregulation. That we didn't see. But again, looking at the issue that have to do with floating the naira, we all understand and agree that demand and supply is a natural force that fixes price. But what we had in the past was under the former government through CBN was the I&E window. That's importers and investors and importers window. Through which they give a lesser rate to people importing for maybe production purposes. That best explains the reason we'll be seeing goods produced in Nigeria that are leveraged on imported raw material is bound to increase. But again, I think another area we are not looking at is, or perhaps the government is not looking at, is we are seeing some people compare Nigeria with China. That when China needed to revolutionize their country to go into production, that they devalue their currency. That is correct. But what we are not seeing here in Nigeria is we are not seeing that energy, that vigor, that tenacity on the part of government to governance economic activities to attract investors, whether on the part of our laws, on the part of our approach and policies to make sure we start producing. Because if you are not producing and you are making these policies, it will not give you any, it will not make any success.
Now, subsidy removal has been kissed goodbye, looking at the fact that it has already taken effect before now, and we've been having this conversation long before this time. Interestingly, we'll keep talking about this because the fact that the ripple effect is going to have both on human life and businesses cannot be overemphasized. Now, talk to us about the adverse effect it's going to have, especially with the fact that we are now living with the realities.
It's simple, and I think it is not too late for government to address those fundamentals, because you are going to see astronomical increase of transportation fares, and when that happens, it's going to impact on almost everything we do as a people. because we all agree that PMS have a multiplier effect in our economy. Anything that happens to PMS reflects in almost every human endeavor in this country. So to that extent, we are likely going to see a continuous suffering in that regard. And don't forget that recently the media space was awash with speculation. Let me use speculation that we may not have seen the end of increase in pump price, because we understand that the independent marketers have not started bringing in their own products. And by the time they start bringing their own product, it's going to perhaps go above what we are seeing. And it's going to be a reflection of what is the current exchange rates. Because you have liberalized the market, you are not going to give importers of PMS any special rates. They are going to source for their forex anywhere, like any other Nigerian, maybe through money banks, deposit banks, and all that. And when that happens, definitely we are likely going to see an increase in the pump price. So for me, we are likely going to expect more hardship, except the government moving to address those fundamentals. And I think it's simple. What the government needs to do is simple if they are sincere. Because don't forget that kerosene has been deregulated long before now. Nobody is complaining. The reason is not far-fetched, because there's alternative to that. You cannot compare. People must not go and buy kerosene for cooking. You can make use of your cylinder, you fill your gas and cook. Then in the area of diesel, it has been deregulated. Vehicles that run on diesel are not as much as vehicles that run on PMS. So that's the reason you are not seeing Nigerians complaining when you see those other products of petroleum deregulated. So in the same vein, if you go to major cities like Lagos, Kano, Port Harcourt, and all the major capitals of states in Nigeria, use some of the vehicles, public transport vehicles, convert them to run on liquefied natural gas. If you do that, Nigerians will no longer complain, because the transportation, you drive down the cost of transportation. People are complaining because of the high cost of transportation. And because the source of energy is multifarious. It's not just one source. And new policies and programs that will encourage people to start diversifying into other areas, so that people will not, the attention on fossil fuel will reduce.
Okay, now when you talk about the fact that these sectors have been deregulated before now, and of course Nigerians have alternative, and that's why the issue of panic buying, the issue of being pressed because of the fact that you've got no option is totally out of the way. What is causing this delay, especially when it comes to political will, to make sure that there is an alternative to PMS, more like liquefied natural gas in this case?
What I can only phantom out is perhaps the government is not willing to spend that kind of money to do the intervention.
But they can borrow $800 million palliative measures.
I'm not aware. And I'm equally aware that I don't think that money has been put to use. And even if you deploy that money, for me, like I've always said, is grossly inadequate. Because we are looking about just 12,000 naira to the vulnerable per person. So for me, that money is nothing to write about.
But would that sum of money not be able to go a little far in making sure that there is an alternative to PMS, rather than giving that money to indigents when you know that that money is not going to take?
I think you make a very good point you make here. Because if you now deploy that money to convert those vehicles to run on compressed natural gas, you would have solved the problem of the vulnerable you are trying to give physical cash to, perhaps alleviate the hardship that comes to them as a result of the subsidy removal. Yeah. So for me, I think that money would have been better put to use, if you deploy it to converting those vehicles to run on CNG.